Welcome to Fast Pace, the new growth, leadership and management podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Dean Mackie. We wanted to peel back the layers on what happens in the world of fast-paced real estate agencies, from new leadership models to the management challenges we all face each day. This is about a new era in the estate agency sector. Rapid changes to business models, service lines, remuneration and growth present the greatest opportunities that we've ever seen. Sit back, get inspired, grow your skills and reimagine what's possible with Fast Pace. Every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Josh Phegan Digital. One of the great things about being a business founder is that, you started the business and so you kind of know everything about how it works and how it operates. And then all of a sudden people join you and they add to it and the business starts to build over a period of time. And then you start to realize that you've actually got this incredible knowledge base about how the business operates. And occasionally you see someone come into the organization and they do something and you think, hey, that's not the way that we actually do it. Or you know what, how come they're asking that question? Or how come every single time someone starts in the business, they always ask that question? It's probably because we don't actually have it documented. Dean, I'm on a bit of a crazy drive at the moment to really make sure that we've got incredible documentation around how things actually work and what we do to operate so that anyone in our business can effectively just do search and find it. And that's a really important part to be able to pull up all of that information. And what we've worked out is that there's a lot of organizations that have got an incredible amount of IP, but they don't have it stored anywhere, so you can't actually grab it and make it accessible. What is a knowledge base? How do you actually make it useful to your people? And is it something that you should start to build out? Dean, you've been around this sort of stuff for a long period of time. You've got an incredible amount of knowledge. You've taught me a lot of stuff in the very early days and still do today. But in the very early days, we dialed hard on sales process and understanding that and selling USPs. And the interesting conversation is, where does all of that sit? And what do you actually do to make sure that it's really useful and accessible to people inside of your company?
Thanks, Josh. I'm always learning how to get better with this stuff. I constantly find that there'll be something happen in the business and I'll be like, oh, where's that document, that we used to use that was really valuable? And then you realize that it's being used to some degree or another or not in the organization. And straight away then you realize that, hey, we need to do a better job on this stuff. Yeah. And it's constant, right? Because when you've had 20 years or so of experience, there's lots of things over the years because, the real estate cycle is interesting. There's certain things that become relevant at different parts of the cycle that aren't relevant in others. So they get used for a bit and then they get dropped off, right? And then you forget about it. Where did that go again? And I think sometimes we've all come from legacy systems, or you might have come from a franchise, or you might have relied on your franchisor for stuff, or alternatively you might have had it sitting in some hard drive, or someone used to manage it. They don't work with you anymore, and all of these sorts of different things that sort of happen just on a practical day-to-day basis in every small business around the country, right? So I think that all of us can learn how to get better at this, but I think you're spot on. I think having a knowledge base where people get to be able to understand, well, firstly, make sure that they understand, here's how we do things here, right? So there has to be some training and induction and onboarding and all this. This is how we do things here. That's the first thing. And then making sure that when you do that, provide that training and you provide that support, that there's somewhere to go to. So I think we've learned that we need to use the technology that's available to us. So we use a lot of stuff that sits inside our Microsoft stack. Mm-hmm. Because we're a Microsoft business, and there's so many things that sit there that allow us to share stuff. So, and SharePoints and all bits and pieces that you got, and then there's an intranet that sits behind that, and then there's all the different parts of the business that you can just sort of dial into that when you need forms or you need this or you need that or whatever. So I think that it's got to be valuable and it's got to be accessible, right? So you've got to be able to access these things rather than it sort of again sitting in a server or someone's inbox or relying on one individual or sitting in a folder in some cupboard somewhere. But I still hear all the time, where do I find that? Or I didn't know that existed or whatever. So I think sometimes what happens is if you've got an organization that you've trained and are operating in a particular way, and then what I've learned is sometimes then you evolve, and then the new people get access to the stuff that you've evolved to, but sometimes you forget about the people that have been in the business for a long time who might not have gotten the benefit of the new training, right? Yeah. So I think it's a really circular process on how you get your whole business up to speed. But I think what you've got to do is think about a platform or something centralized that people can access digitally from anywhere on their phone. Mm-hmm. obviously, for you as an organisation, you need to make sure you've got the appropriate security in place and whatever. But we use a combination of things. So we've got our own HR stack, which we use that has everything HR related,
employment contracts, all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's called Employment Hero, and it's got a whole bunch of other things that sort of sit inside that, and that connects to our payroll system and some other things. And we use, as I said, our Microsoft stack, but. When everyone then understands, well, that's where you go to for things, it makes it a lot easier. If you get a culture of that's where we go to, so that we can house, if you've got like content, it could even be, we make video content on a regular basis about different things that are happening with events, or we've got our own Dow Jones manifesto, values, whatever. All these things can sort of sit on your platform. So you can update your platform and drop and drag stuff in and out of it, whatever you choose to use, to become almost like not just a place for your knowledge base, but it can also become a bit of a hub for your culture and your community as well.
So one of the things that I've learned is that, and rightly or wrongly, is that I love that content to come through me as the author at some point, to make sure that the content is written in the same sort of style, and to make sure that it fits into that style guide, and also to be the curator of it, so that actually, if there are things that are no longer relevant, that it's archived and removed out of the system. And what I've found is that when you walk into some organizations, they've got like 123 different versions of the I'm in real estate letter, as opposed to having the one that we use. And it's a really important part to say who's actually in charge of collecting that information and putting that there and sending that to someone inside of your organisation. Now, Dean, as the organisation scales, you're not going to be able to do that.
Oh, no, I don't do it, mate.
Yeah, but having said that, I tell you what, I give you a laptop and say, mate, I need you to write out that process.
Yeah.
You'll probably nail it in like an hour and a half, whereas someone else could take a couple of weeks to actually get what's in your head. And so having you as a part of that process, either in reading the final version or the briefing of it, is a really critical part. And then how does that then relate to an audio or video version as well?
Yeah, sure, maybe. Look, it's horses for courses. Like, I've got people in our team that just are amazing on compliance, right? And I've got to tell you, I want to stay well away from that as much as I can, because,
you love it, man.
Yeah, and everyone loves it, right? I actually do, because it saves my bacon plenty, right?
Yeah.
So compliance is there for a very good reason, but you've got people in there who love that stuff, who are all over it. And I've got someone who just drives that across the organisation, who's responsible for making sure all of that stuff's in order and that the team are properly trained and they've got the right tools and they understand what's required of them and all that stuff. And it's an ongoing thing, right? So if you think about this as something where all those swim lanes you have in your business, it's just a matter of getting it on a spot where it's documented. And it's a system, it's in a place that people know where to go and how to use it. Like, so for example, over the years, Josh, we built way back a thing called our guiding principles, right? And that was actually built, I remember when we built that, we had like 8 agents in the business. We sat in a room over at a bowling club, and we knocked it out in a day. And the whole idea of the guiding principles was to set up a set of guidelines around how we do business as agents together, how we communicate, what happens when you list in someone else's BDA, if you have BDAs, and all this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
All the sort of hygiene things. And then that document over the years has continued to be updated and adjusted to include data rules and this and that. And as the organisation changes, it's continued to evolve at the edges, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And sometimes some whole new chapters go in. So we've now been working back on that again. It's a constant thing to work on. So that's particularly as we've grown as an organisation, there are some parts of our business that have never seen a thing called a guiding principles.
Yeah.
And how does that actually work? And then it's a whole cultural shift and blah, blah, blah. And so now we're just going through the reiteration of the new version of this. It's really great. So our marketing team have gotten hold of it. So it's no longer just this boring, dry document, but it's pretty sexy now. And so I've seen that version of that document. That document's about to be trained out. It's going to go onto our central repository for people to access. It forms a key part of our induction. The next phase is building in all the video content and then audio conversation and podcasts and stuff to support it. But it's a living, breathing thing, right? So then our sales managers and in our regions have got a document that really, they don't have to really use it, because the team, if they're trained really well on it, you never have to pull the document out, right?
Yeah, but they've got accessibility.
But it's also, everyone's got access, and it becomes a corner piece of how we do business here, right? And it's accessible by everyone. And when anyone joins the organisation, that's a key part of their induction learning program, right? So therefore, this is like a real life example of the sort of stuff that you should have in your knowledge base, right? This is how we do stuff here.
And the big thing I learned, we were part of a quality endorsed company, our real estate practice back in the day, and so we had the 5 ticks. So it was ISO 9001. And as a part of that, you have to have version control. And that's the biggest problem inside of these companies. There's not like version control and people looking at old docs that aren't relevant to today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And so yeah, having people on that, and I'm not the person to be doing that. There's different people who look after different elements. But yeah, it's an interesting process. It's a never ending process. And as you're evolving and getting better as a business, you've got to have that. Otherwise, your business, you've got people that are just not keeping up at pace. And, little things, if you put in place a process on how to refer from your property management to your sales or vice versa or whatever, then you may as well document it and put it into some sort of central repository, make it digital. It's all then trackable. No one has any arguments. If you didn't fill the document out, it didn't exist and all that sort of, but we have to have some rules of how you do business, right? One of the other things, Josh, that's coming online for us, which is in this space is around wellness.
Yeah.
So we've started with 50 people in the organization around just understanding from a data perspective, where do they need help personally from a wellness perspective? And when we collect that data from across those 50 people, it gives us trends on where they need help. And then we can identify and prioritize what we do, whether it be with stress mastery or whether it be, whatever it might be, right? And then building a centralized place that as we build these tools out, they give people access to those resources they need, and not necessarily when we want to deliver it, but as we build this stuff out
on demand,
it becomes an on-demand system that allows people then to dial in when they need to. So you might start somewhere and go, okay, we're going to start with a concept. And I don't think you've got to have it all in one go, right? These sort of online learning systems and knowledge repository in your business, is knowledge base. It's something you build over time. You've
constantly
working on, right? So we might start here and end over there. But at the end of the day, it's about having a strategy to give your people the tools that they need to have access to as and when they need it.
I think this is a big part, and what I've learned, as we go to deliver our next blueprint is that ability to go back in and edit and remove, no longer relevant. This is the new stuff. That's the new way we do that. Hey, we're bringing that back is the most important skill here to keep these things up to date with where your organization is going to go into the future.